Okay, all right, guys. I'm Nick. This is Flannel Fest. I'm here with local musician Chad Skiz. Chad, do you kind of want to talk about just to start how you got started in music and who were your earliest musical influences?
Well, music has always been like a really integral part of my life. I've always connected to it. And the funny thing is, growing up, I loved watching movies and just all sorts of entertainment. And I remember like going to the movies and just remembering looking up at the screen and being like, I kind of want to do something like that. And then I found out that I'm actually pretty good at music, and there's actually like a job for this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I want to do that. And then one thing just kind of led to another, and I started taking it a little more seriously. When I was about 17, I made like a cover album, and then I kind of promoted that, but I was kind of afraid that I'd get in trouble for copyright and all that stuff, so I kind of pulled it, and then I was like, I want to do my own thing. So,
do you play like acoustic guitar and things like that? Were you like involved in music, like kind of when you were in like elementary school or middle school or anything like that? I know some people start like super early, and some people I started when I was like 19.
Right. I actually wasn't. I tried playing electric guitar a few times and kind of dabbled with drums and sort of thing, but I'm just not that good at that side of things. I'm more like the creative and the writer and like everything else.
So did you, so as far as when you're kind of crafting your songs, do you have a band who kind of helps you with that, or how do you kind of go about the process of your songwriting?
Well, I'm like a master at improv. I feel self-proclaimed, of course. And I knew that I couldn't play anything. I didn't really know anybody outside of like maybe 2-3 friends that could kind of sort of play guitar. I had one really good friend that played really well, but it just kind of wasn't in the cards at the time. So I actually went online and I was like, okay, I know there's people that play, that they make music and stuff like that. So I actually found a guy named Germain. He's outside the cities, and connected with him, kind of told him my vision, and we've been working together ever since.
Oh, nice. So is he kind of like does he kind of run a studio in the Twin Cities area?
Yeah, it's called the Mariana Studios.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Pretty much I send him all my ideas, all my voice clips and sort of stuff like that. I'm sure there's some really interesting recordings of me out there going like, okay, and then I want this part to go, that sort of thing. But he takes the mess that I give him and like the random ideas that I throw, and like together we kind of create what we create.
Do you when you're kind of thinking about, so you kind of approach it more from like a lyrical perspective?
Yep.
Okay, so then do you take influences from any influences from like poetry or TV or movies when you're kind of crafting your lyrics, or?
Oh yeah, I take influences from everywhere. I could be walking down the road and see a piece of gum or something on that's like an exaggeration, but it's I watch a lot of movies. I watch a lot of just interviews and stories from like my favorite artists and listen to their music and kind of pick up from there, and also like mainly my own life experience, and I just draw from everything that I can.
So is it are you kind of like, as far as like when you're crafting your songs, how long does it take you to kind of like flesh out a song? And I guess like how do you kind of filter out the ideas that you aren't happy with at the, like, when you're kind of, I know with like with releasing Daybreak, you probably had a lot of like a lot of long nights writing. So how do you kind of be like, well, this is a good idea versus like, no, I'm not going to use that one?
I kind of just feel my way through it, honestly, and it really depends on the song. One of my songs, Freak Flag, I literally woke up one morning and I just had the whole calling all weirdos, freaks, and sideshows, and I was just like, this is weird. I gotta write it down, and then I ended up writing that song, I think, in like 5 minutes. It was crazy.
Do you as far as like when you're kind of like writing down, like do you keep like a notebook or any kind of like, so you have like notebooks full of lyrics then that you like to,
a lot of word vomit, a lot of feelings, a lot of phrases.
Do you save them all, or do you ever like cross them off and be like, well, no, that's not good at all?
I save every single one of them.
So as far as like managing, like you have like, obviously you said you send like kind of like voice clips to your your producer and everything. So like, how do you kind of like, I guess, do you have like a lot of storage that you keep, or is it kind of getting to the point where it's like, oh, I've got a lot of memory filled up right now with?
I actually just had to buy a new hard drive because I bought a computer that filled up really fast, and then I was like, crap, I need to, so yeah, it goes pretty fast.
As far as the as far as the process for like, your songwriting goes, do you kind of, did your producer kind of have a band that he frequently worked with, or did he do all the music, the backing music, like himself then, or how did that kind of work?
I think it's a little bit of both. He's a multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah.
And he works with a couple people. There's some times where I throw like a curveball and I'm like, I really want like a cello in this one, and he's like, okay. So yeah, we work it out, and
how do you kind of, as far as like, when you're deciding the genre of stuff, or the influence you want to pull from, how do you kind of like hone in on like, I want it to sound like, is it just kind of based on like artists that you're more feeling that day, or is it kind of like, I think this would sound really good as this kind of a song, or how do you kind of decide like what your sound is going to be for a particular track?
It depends on the moment, how I feel. There are some times where it's like, okay, I really want to do this type of thing, and then I kind of guide myself through everything, and then whatever, like there's some surprises where it's like, oh, that's not what I originally intended at all, but I'm glad it worked out this way.
Have you ever had to go back and like redo a song because it wasn't like what you originally intended?
Yeah, I've made a couple whoopsies, I guess, but yeah, like there are times where it's just like, no, I'm not really feeling this, and I've had to do a couple like retakes for vocals, and drives my producer insane because sometimes it's just like, it's good, just leave it alone.
Yeah.
I work with another producer here in Fargo named John Shea.
Oh, yep, I know John.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, and I tracked the vocals and stuff with him, and he actually gave me a little bit of advice that like really, well, he gave me a lot of advice, but that really stuck with me, and that's great art is never finished. It's abandoned.
Right.
And I completely agree with that.
I think that's one of the things, like, I don't know, like that's one of the things I've learned as an audio engineer, even like from mixing like audio, is that like you can always improve on something. It's never gonna really be done. You just have to get it done like by the deadline that you're thinking, and you can always come back to it later.
Like I will mess with a song until the end of time. Mm-hmm. And I really had to learn that lesson of like, okay, it's fine, it's good, because you get to a point where you just keep tinkering with it, and the only person that notices it is you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. And yeah.
Are you thinking that there's some songs that you would want to go back and like revisit and maybe do like some remixes or something? Or have you like have you had an idea to like, well, I know, because like some artists will put out a song and they'll be like, I really want to do this, but I want to do a different version of it.
Yeah, I kind of like I said, I do, but I try and stop myself because right. I know there's probably going to be a day where it's like, all right, I want to like completely shake this song up and do sort of a remix, but I'm still trying to learn that whole you gotta abandon it whenever you think it's decent,
Yeah. So are you as far as like around the area, do you you just had your album release show not too long ago? Yeah. Where was that at?
It was at Twist downtown.
Oh, nice. Is that a bar and grill kind of?
It's like it's just a cozy bar restaurant place. They're really great there.
Yeah. Did you have so as far as was the turnout for that pretty good? Like, how did that show go overall?
I think so. It was pretty much just a get together of a bunch of friends and family and that sort of thing. And my agency, my manager was there, and we just had fun. It was a really relaxed sort of event.
Do you have you had a chance to play some of the other venues around the area yet? In terms of like the aquarium or the TAC in Dilworth, any of those kind of places?
Not yet, but I'm coming for you guys as soon as I get everything together. Yeah.
Sweet. Do you have as far as when you're
if you'll have me.
I think one thing I wanted to kind of touch on too is like, do you when you're doing either when you're playing your songs like for the album release or when you're recording your songs, you said when you're writing you do a lot of improvisation. Do you like to throw things out at gigs too, like throw out new ideas that you didn't throw out before?
Yeah, I get bored really easily, especially artistically, and I always like challenging myself. So yeah, there's some times where like recording vocals or something like that, I'll just tell John, like, hold on, I have another idea. Like, let's do another take, and usually that's kind of the keeper.
Yeah. So, have you done as far as like when you're playing your shows, do you have like backing tracks that you use, or do you have a band that you kind of like? Did they have a house band at the Twist, or how did you kind of play that show?
Well, that one, like I said, it was just more of like a relaxed event. I didn't really play anything there. I've only technically performed once in Chicago when we went to Launch Showcase, and that time I had a background, like a track that I sang to, and I'm still piecing together like the band idea and that sort of stuff, but it's coming.
Do you? Are there any artists in town that you kind of would want to collaborate with? I'm not sure how many. Like, I know some people don't like as musicians. Like, some people don't get out and like network with other bands. But are there people that you're kind of like in talks with now to possibly do a backing band, or do you prefer that backing track? approach? I know I've seen artists do both, but
I would love to. I feel like I would be more of a band type, like a live band behind me. I still want to stay solo, maybe collab with other artists, but as far as like forming a band or something like that, I would just kind of like it to stay me, sort of thing. As far as other bands working with me, I'm completely open to anybody. I love meeting new people. I love getting out there, and look me up if you like what you hear.
To everybody in the Fargo Moorhead music scene, if you want to work with Chad, he's a good dude. You should hit him up. So as far as Daybreak is concerned, when did you put it out?
October 25th.
Okay, and I guess kind of take us through, like, when did you first kind of know, like, you wanted to do what eventually became Daybreak? Like, when did that start?
Probably a little over 5 years ago. I wanted to kind of make something of my own, and sort of one thing just led to another, and it's like, oh, I actually, like, I have a couple songs that I've written, and then I wanted to kind of showcase kind of my personality, and I have kind of a crazy personality as it is, and there's so many things that I'm influenced by, and just looking at me, I might not look like some of my songs, but I wanted to showcase as much as I possibly could, and I think Daybreak has a pretty decent mix. But yeah, it was about a little over 5 years ago, and just slowly but surely I started collecting these songs, and then it turned into Daybreak.
Did you was there a big point where you were like, you know, this is like where it went from like a fun project to like, this is something I seriously want to like put more time into and to release? Because I know, like, just from talking to you in acting class, that was something that you've been working on for like a long time, that you were really serious about and putting a lot into. So was there a point when it wasn't super serious and then you were like, oh, well, now I really have to put this out now?
See, the thing with me is whenever I start a new project, I tend to get, like, tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And I like to kind of put my nose to the grindstone, and sometimes that's puts a little strain on some things in my life, and it's unfortunate, but it's part of who I am, and I almost wouldn't have it any other way, but I completely understand the gravity of what that could do, and I try and be conscious of all that, but sometimes I just get a little too intense, I guess.
As far as, like, you're, you know, like, would you say that you're somebody who, like, I mean, I know some artists, they're like, I want to take my music, and I want to, some people, like, they like doing it locally, and they're content with doing it locally. Some people want to expand. Are you thinking, like, you want to, you know, turn, like, your music career into, like, eventually into, like, a bigger thing? Is that, I mean, some artists are like, I'm totally cool staying local, I don't want to do anything else, but I mean, I know, like, some people, like, music for me is, like, bigger than that. I want to go beyond locally.
Right. Yeah, I definitely want to start locally, but I definitely want to expand, and if I have it my way, I want to set the world on fire. I want to help as many people as I can, hopefully. If they connect with any of my stuff, great. That's what I do it for.
As far as when writing the album, how did you kind of start off with, like, you had obviously you probably had like a lot of like lyrical ideas. So did you kind of take take your lyrics and stuff that you have and start kind of singing like different ideas and recording them, or like how did your process kind of start, like as far as fleshing out those songs?
Yeah, it was kind of a case by case process. Like I said, for Freak Flag, it was instantaneous.
Mm-hmm.
A couple songs I had to sit and think for a while, and it just didn't feel finished. It didn't, like, even close to finished.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't say what I wanted it to say, and sometimes, to be completely honest, I don't remember writing a lot of my songs. Because, like, I listen back and I read the lyrics, and I'm just like, wow, like, I don't remember writing this.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Did you, I mean, was it, as far as, you said it was released October 25th?
Yep.
So as far as, like, how long did it kind of, like, when did it kind of, like, you said 5 years ago it kind of began, so did you go through a lot of, like, I guess, like, how many times were you kind of, like, writing and rewriting within those 5 years? Was it a lot of breaks in between? Or did you kind of keep going straight through?
How I exercise my demons is I sit down and I have to write about it. I have to get it out. I have to, there's been a couple more than a couple nights where I have to just sit down, a couple glasses of wine or, whatever, and just have some real conversations with myself and get that out. And I usually am always writing. Sometimes there's a couple dry spells or whatever, but yeah. And as far as like actually creating like the music and like making headway that way, there's been a handful of different breaks to try and focus more on like my personal life and that sort of thing. But yeah, I usually always come back to music and writing.
Did you do you have any particular places that you like? Do you like to write at home, or I mean, I know some artists are like, I have to get in a certain space where I feel the most comfortable to write. Did you ever go anywhere else to kind of like? I know some artists like to write at like coffee shops or parks, like peaceful places they consider like peaceful. Did you have any moments like that where you're like, writing at home isn't working? I gotta.
I've tried different places, but I usually come back home. That's usually my space. Not say that the other places don't work, but I find that whenever I'm seriously sitting down and writing a full-fledged song, it's usually at home. Mm-hmm. I get inspired everywhere, and if I do, I like pull out like a napkin and a pen or whatever. But
did you? So where are you from originally?
I am originally from Mitchell, South Dakota.
Oh, nice. Does that have any influence on your music, or have you been back there in a while to kind of like?
It's been a hot minute since I've been home. I'm looking at coming back soon. But as far as any inspiration, of course, friends, family. Mm-hmm. There are a couple songs that aren't on the album that are kind of inspired from back home, and we'll see. Maybe the next album will make those songs in there.
Mm-hmm. Were you out? Did you because you said you've been to like Chicago, right?
Yep.
Have you gotten a chance to, like, I know like some of the actors in our class and stuff like that, they've gotten a chance to like go out to like LA or anything like that. Have you what other kind of places have you gotten a chance to travel to, and have they influenced any of your songs thus far?
I've been to Chicago, LA, Nevada, Reno, Nevada, And yeah, it's all kind of part of the big picture of inspirations and that sort of thing. When we were in Chicago, it was for a launch showcase, and basically what that is it's sort of like it's a showcase of like models, actors, singers, dancers, and like different producers and managers and like bigwigs from all over come to this event, and they look at what you do and they give you constructive criticism, and if they like you, they'll start working with you. And yeah, I got a couple contacts that I'm pretty stoked about.
Does have you, as far as like what you've experienced, is it did you get a chance to kind of experience music in those cities, and did any of those either influence your songs, or did you take any like notes about like, oh, this is how music is like done way differently here than it would be in like, you know, like the FM area, or you know, in your hometown or anything like that? Like, did you notice a lot of differences or anything you could kind of pull from in your own music?
I've noticed that every place that I've been to definitely has a certain vibe, and unfortunately I haven't like explored that side of things as much as I'd like to, but I would definitely be up for coming back and kind of diving into that scene. I think that'd be really fun.
As far as when you're working on Daybreak, did you so like kind of like when you started putting all your songs kind of together, did you bring a lot of songs into the studio? Like, did you have to like cut some out that you were like, oh, you should? I mean, did he give you any advice in terms of like you should probably have like, I don't know, like 10 to 12 songs versus like, you know, coming in with like 20 or something like that?
Originally, I actually was planning on 14 songs, and we kind of ran into a couple time constraints and a couple like technical issues and that sort of thing, and we kind of decided that 10 would be a good number. Like I said, I kind of wanted to showcase like the many sides of me, the many sounds and inspirations and that sort of thing. But yeah, 10 songs ended up making it, and I think they do a pretty good job of kind of showcasing who I am.
What do you do with I know you said you keep a lot of ideas as far as like song ideas that like you don't keep for those specific albums. I know like a lot of musicians are like, oh, I'll just put them on the next album, but I know like things like, you know, experiences change and things like that for people, and they're like, well, that doesn't really fit the vibe I'm going for with this next album. Do you kind of like hold on to them and like maybe it'll fit a vibe I'm thinking for an album down the line, or do you kind of say like, well, it's not gonna fit anything as I'm kind of moving forward, so maybe I'm not gonna use it?
Right. I keep them in my back pocket. My style and genres, I always make the joke it's kind of like schizophrenia at its best. There's a little bit of like pop, there's rock influences, like more alternative, there's more kind of like haunting kind of vibe sort of thing. So I mean, anything is possible. It kind of depends on the song and like what fits what, I guess. What are you feeling at the time?
What are you kind of jamming out to currently? Like, what do you like in your free time? Like, what do you really like to jam out to? Like, or either in terms of like, what is it different than what inspired Daybreak? Like do you like does what you listen to kind of match the vibe of the album, or is it kind of like just depending on what you're feeling that day?
Yeah, it depends what I'm feeling. I actually found a song not too long ago. It's called "When It Goes Down" by Dream On. She's an independent artist. I don't know what it is, but that song gets stuck in my head. I find myself singing it and kind of shamelessly dancing to it. that song I've been listening to. I've been listening to a lot of like Florence and the Machine, of Mice and Men, and I also kind of go towards Fletcher,
Okay.
and like Ava Max and Adam Lambert also. But I mean, I'm also like I love having different influences, so I also go for like the older, like Elton John, Queen, the Ramones. Yeah.
Do you think like in the future you'd want to like I know you said you like to do like different influences and things like that. I know like some bands like to go really outside the box and they'll be like, let's add some rap to this, to this punk track or this whatever. Do you have like moments like that when you're like, this is kind of weird, but I really want to add like, like rap vocals to something in the future, or like jazz influence or anything like that you think like it might not go together, but it sounds really good in my head or something like.
I mean, if it works, yeah. I feel like in Daybreak there's a little bit of that, but I mean, yeah, if it works, like I never say never. So, and I think that's a good outlook to have.
Yeah,
and you grow that way too. And if it doesn't, then oops.
Yeah. Have you thought about like in the future with like songs like getting some like maybe doing like things like duets or doing some like reaching out to people and being like, I really want to work with like either some hip hop artists in town, or like I know we have a lot of like blues and like soul artists in town. Would that be something that you think you'd want to be down for?
I mean, yeah. Kind of like I said, if it works,
yeah,
why not? If we jive and get along, and yeah, I'm up for it.
So on, as far as like the album goes, getting into like, I guess like song. Well, first I was going to ask you about as far as like music goes, do you have any like guilty pleasure artists, like band, whether they influence Daybreak or not? Like man,
I don't feel guilty about any of my pleasures. No, I mean, I pull inspiration from anywhere, and yeah, I don't think so. I think if it works in my head, if it sounds good, I kind of go after it.
Do you have any genres that are like that? This is my least favorite genre of music, or like what I wouldn't pull from for an album?
Probably, I don't listen to like a lot of screamo, like that sort of thing. Like if I don't know what you're saying, like like I respect your passion. It's cool, you know, but I'm not personally into it. But yeah, like if something is just like it has absolutely no passion, I typically stay away from that sort of thing.
As far as like like I guess like what's your opinion? I know like a lot of musicians will like they'll release something and like they'll go back to their classic sound that kind of got them like famous or something like that, but it might not be like, it might sound like something that they did before, and the fans might be super happy with it, but like there's always that divide of like it sounds like what they did before, but it's not original. Like, would you as an artist, would you rather have like your favorite artists releasing things that are like new and different, or do you kind of like when they go back to their classic approach? Like,
I think a good mix is always a good idea. There's sometimes where I listen to someone and like they completely don't sound like themselves. Like they sound like themselves, but like not their, and I'm like I miss out on that kind of nostalgia, but it's also a new door. But you know, like I'm along for the ride. I personally feel like just a good mix is key to kind of balancing out new fans and like your old fans.
Yeah, because like I just like to ask about that because I know like when I don't know if you're a Paramore fan, but and like
She's got an incredible voice.
Oh yeah, like Hayley Williams is like top tier as far as vocalists goes, but she is like in terms of like I always go back to Paramore because they can release pretty much anything in my opinion, and it sounds like Paramore, but it always sounds like new at the same time, and there's always that mix of influences in there.
I think that's partially has to do with kind of like that it factor too. Like if you're able to pull it off, it just makes you that stronger of an artist. I feel like there are a good handful of people that can do that. But yeah.
As far as getting like, you know, when you're writing your songs, do you ever have to like kind of like as far when you're going back and like maybe you're like like listening to old songs or like you're maybe practicing old songs, do you ever have to like get yourself back in like certain mindsets to play certain songs? I mean, is it like I know some artists are like, man, like this was a time in my life that like it's kind of hard to relate to now looking back. Like, do you feel like your music's kind of like is like the stuff on Daybreak is kind of stuff that you're going to be able to kind of go back to and like, yeah, I can remember that, or is it going to be something that where you're going to have to think about like how am I going to, you know, get the emotion out that I need to for this song?
I feel like me personally, every time that I listen to a song, especially if it's like one of mine, it just brings me right back to where I was. So I don't think that will really be a problem. Because it was an integral part of my life, and it made me who I am today, so I don't think that I will have any problem kind of going back and like pulling out the emotions that I need to.
Do you ever get to a point with your songwriting where it's like you're, you know, like where it's either it's like too hard for you to sing about like at the current point in your life, or maybe it's like, man, like or either with old ideas or new ideas, like, man, I don't really feel that way anymore, like the way I felt when I wrote it, or like has your perspective like changed since writing some songs, or has it kind of like, I know the album's relatively new, so maybe it hasn't gotten a chance to like really change, but is it something is like either like ideas you've had in the past? Like, have you ever had things where it's like, man, my attitude about this song is a lot different than when I wrote it originally? Or
I mean, it happens sometimes it is kind of hard to write about those things, but I feel like that makes the song. It, like I'm almost an overshare sometimes. I have no problem with being honest and telling you how I feel. My mouth has gotten me into more trouble than I'd like to admit, but at least I can look back and say, hey, at least I was real, at least I was honest. And yeah, there's a couple songs on there that are hard to listen to sometimes, because it reminds me of everything that has happened. But on the flip side,
I guess I was going to ask about like one of the songs that was pretty I imagine would be pretty personal was on Lost in a Kiss. You talk about what seems to be issues about like infidelity, like a partner kind of drifting away from you. One lyric I noticed was like, I'm used to not coming first anymore. Like, is it difficult for you to be like vulnerable and open, or is it like pretty easy to tell your story now at this point?
I mean, with Lost in a Kiss, that song, I feel like, was written from a very honest and innocent place, really. It's basically just a song, and they're just questions. Some questions I still don't know the answers to. Some I found out. Some I don't know if I'll ever find out, and I'm okay with that. As far as like being like easy, being honest and stuff, it is, but it isn't.
Right.
Like if you want to know how I feel, I'll tell you. Sometimes you might not like it, but it's my opinion. It's how I feel, and everybody has an opinion. There's two sides to every story, and I openly express that this is just my side, and there's other sides out there, and I'm completely willing to hear them if they want to.
Yeah. As far as I just know some artists, like they, like a lot of music, whether it gets put on Spotify or Bandcamp, even from like a local perspective, like like putting music out there to like, what could be, different people that you're not familiar with. Like music's so personal, and you're sharing your life with other people in a sense, like. And when you write about personal subject matter like that, is it ever like, man, like, I don't know if I can air, or I want to air like this with, like, random people, or is it kind of like therapeutic for you to be able to do that?
I feel it's therapeutic. There are some times where things might come back to bite me, but, like, I always try and be conscious of how I write and phrasing, and I don't want to like point fingers at like the person, but more so like acts or how I feel at the time. And like all my empowerment songs, like I've been there. I've felt completely like down in the dirt, and I know that things will get better. And it's just a bad time now, but yeah, for me it's therapeutic, and like I said, I try and be conscious with how I write.
Yeah. So as far as I guess one other song I was going to ask you about was on Boys Kiss Boys. You talk about the LGBTQ plus community. And how they shouldn't have to be judged in public for loving one another. Have you received, like, as an LGBT individual, like, have you received, like, any criticism, either, like, for other reasons or for your music? And I guess, what is your advice to people who might be being, like, bullied or feeling alone within that community?
Oh, yeah. When I posted the lyric video, I've had comments to tell me to go hang myself.
Yeah.
And
YouTube's kind of, unfortunately, it's kind of a cesspool.
It is. But, I mean, writing that song, I knew what I was getting into, and I definitely don't encourage it. But, I mean, it happens, and it's unfortunate that people are like that, or they feel that they need to express that side of themselves, and like it's a question about just love. Like to me, there's so much more to put your attention on than love. Yeah, and it just boggles my mind how insensitive people can be, and at that moment I kind of wish that I could flip the situation on them and like how they feel. But you can't, so.
Yeah, I mean, do you kind of, like, have you gotten a chance to, like, work with any of the, like, I know there's, like, LGBT, like, advocacy groups around the community. Have you gotten a chance to kind of, like, perform at anything, or, like, have you been in talks to perform with any kind of groups like that, or kind of like share, or have you gotten a chance in the past to share your story with those kind of groups at this point?
Not yet. But I'm definitely planning to. not funny thing, but the thing about the song "When Boys Kiss Boys," I wrote it what it's about, and I decided then and there that I'm going to be donating all the proceeds that song makes to different LGBT shelters and things to help the community.
What do you feel like what's one thing you might like? I guess people might who are, whether it's the critics on like YouTube or like people who might not be like familiar with like LGBTQ issues, like what's one thing that you think that, or maybe a few things that you think that they should know, as far as like maybe there's not awareness on certain things within the community, or the like whether it's just the general like we're human beings and it hurts us when you make these kind of comments. Anything that you think people are like still ignorant on that you kind of want to shed some light on here?
I mean, everybody's story is different. Yeah, we are all human. We all bleed red. We're all we're all on this blue marble together. And I feel like people should just know what they're talking about, have an open mind that they could be wrong.
Yeah.
And, just know what you're talking about. Try and, like, be open to the fact that that's another human being sitting right across from you. And what you say hurts, and I know that there's a lot of, like religious nuts and stuff out there, and I usually don't go into religion that much. I understand where they think that they're coming from, but I feel like they are putting their own spin on those sorts of things, and I know people who have studied the Bible and religion inside and out, not just Christianity, but just like religion as a whole. And they can defend it a hell of a lot better than I could.
Right.
But I know the bare bones and just love one another.
Right. I think that's one of the biggest things, like, as whatever your stance is on it, like I support it, but I like LGBT, all like their rights and everything. But I think, and I'm a Christian, but I think like there's people who need to look at it not from a religious standpoint, but just look at it from like a human being perspective. Do you feel like there are artists right now who like, do you feel like all of the artists out there are kind of doing their part in that respect to like represent and like look out for the community? I know like one thing why I kind of bring that up is like I was listening to we had to analyze for my women's studies class. We had to analyze Lady Gaga and like her song "Born This Way," and like you listen to the track and it talks kind of like similar messages to Boys Kiss Boys in the sense of like, loving yourself and like how it's, it should be okay, it should be normal by now, like, but, and like she touches on like people with disabilities and minorities and all that stuff in the song, but then you watch the video and it's mostly Lady Gaga. There's not a lot of people like that she's talking about like within the song. So do you feel like it's in whether in your genre or outside of it, like, do you feel like it's being well represented? Like, is there anything you do better in that regard? That
I feel like some artists and movies and characters and all that, I feel like there are a good handful of them that are doing their part. I'd like to see more. Like, from what I've seen, if you turn on the TV and you see a gay couple, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's usually the stereotypical, and
Yeah.
I feel like there should be more visibility on, like, we're not all like that.
Yeah.
It's fine if you are, it's fine if you're not, and there are so many different shades to us as human beings that I think we should focus on.
Yeah, because I know, like, I mean, I personally love Modern Family as a show. Like, I love the show, but, like, Cam and Mitchell, the gay couple on the show, they might not be representative of, even though Modern Family is pretty good at representing, like, all people from, like, walks of life, it might not be, like, the best representation of that particular community.
Right. And, like, I understand, like, some shows, I don't want to say they have to generalize to get the point across, but I can see kind of their point. I just wish there was a little bit more visual shades of things.
Because I feel like one of the best things that they're doing right now is like cartoons are doing a really like almost a better job than like live action is doing. Right. Like on the Loud House, for example, they have like that one of the characters is like 16 and she has a girlfriend, and that was the first time in like I think one of the first times in modern cartoons that they've done that.
Comics too. I'm a huge nerd. But yeah, I feel like they're showcasing the different shades of humanity and the LGBT community, and I personally would just like to see more of that. I think that they're kind of on the right path.
Do you think that, like, as far as like, what's one thing in your opinion in like the LGBT community that you think like they could be a lot better in terms of like, I know that some people have said, like, who are in the LGBT community have said like people like don't support each other as much as they should. Right. Like there's a lot of like shaming going on with like you're not like a bodybuilder type of like, especially the issue with like body positivity within the LGBT community.
Right. I mean, I get that people like what they like, but I feel like if you're the type of person in the LGBTQ community that puts others down because they're not like this or like that, like it's kind of hypocritical in my opinion. And you like, we all want equality, but some of us aren't doing a very good job at showing that, like, we're all equal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to like, I didn't want to put it on you as like, and be like, Chad, be the spokesperson for, whatever. But I think like what I was excited to have you on and like get your perspective on that because I feel like I don't get a chance to really talk about the LGBT community a whole lot, and like just being able to like sit down and talk about it like from somebody who like is a part of it is like, is a good way to like let people know like about these things. And like,
it definitely does happen. And like I said, I feel like people just need to keep an open mind. Like, it's fine to like what you like. I like what I like. But don't put people down, don't shame people because they're not your flavor of, what you like, what I mean?
Yeah.
We're all kind of in this together, and we should stand together and stand strong and not put those wedges and dividers and things between us, because that's toxic.
As I guess like along those same lines about positivity on songs like Daybreak and Alive, you talk about kind of being in a a darker or a low place in life and kind of being able to like crawl out of it. On that, how do you kind of stay positive, I guess, like whether musically or just in life in general, and like what would be your advice to people who might be feeling like life will never get better? I know we kind of touched a little bit on that earlier in the interview with like you saying you've had your days where it's like you feel like nothing's ever going to get better, but do you have any tricks for kind of maintaining a positive mindset? Or
it takes a lot of work. I think it's just realizing that it's just a bad chapter, not a bad life.
Yeah.
And I'm completely for, if people want to come to me and vent their problems, like, I'm a good ear. And I will tell you my advice if you want it. But yeah, I think it's just to stay conscious that it will be okay. It's just a rut in the road, and no matter what you're going through, it's going to make you into who you're supposed to be.
Do you, I know some artists are big on, like, they do a lot of, like, they read a lot of, like, books, or they do, like, meditation. Do you do anything, like, to get, like, to either, even just to, like, to relax in general, to get yourself back in a positive thing? Is music kind of that outlet for you? I mean, how do you kind of, like, put yourself in, like, that healthy mindset? Again, if you have any tips or advice on that.
Yeah, I think music is a huge part of, like, me personally. I know that constructively, like, dealing with whatever you're going through, you need to do it in a positive way.
Right.
I do it through art. I do it through music. I do it through, some people draw, some people go for a run, some people, and sometimes it's just as easy as going out with a friend for coffee. And I feel like you just need to find your what works for you.
As far as like the future goes with your current musical journey, do you have any goals for like 2020 as a musician? Like things like, I got to get this done, or I want to get this done. Like, I know you mentioned like possibly like the next album. Is that something you're thinking for like 2020, or is there like, just as something like, I want to get out in the scene more and start playing more gigs? Like, what are you kind of thinking like 2020 is looking like for you?
I feel like 2020 will be kind of like a coming of age story. I want to get together a band and get out more, and really showcase who I am, and be that escape for people, hopefully, and get people to know my name and know who I am and know what I stand for. And if I can help you, great. If not, there's always next time.
Yeah. So I guess to wrap up, is there anything you want to plug in terms of social media, or like, even like, I usually say like, shows or upcoming releases, but is there any places like people can, well, I guess first like social media, but then like, is there places that you're thinking like, I like, look out for me to play this, and hopefully in 2020, or, like release, I have an idea to release this. Anything you want to plug?
Well, first, social media. I'm mainly on Instagram. Chad underscore Skiz underscore official. Facebook is official Chad Skiz. Twitter is official Skiz. Just like Google me.
Yeah.
I that's probably the easiest way. But yeah, and if you want to send me a message, I try and get to everybody. Sometimes I don't. Sorry, but I try. I'm always grateful for all my fans, and if you want to tell me a story of how, maybe my song made you think something was a little different or helped you in some way, that's great. I love hearing from everyone. as far as future projects and stuff, definitely get a band together. And I'm in the pre-production stages of doing another music video.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Chad. I'm Nick, and this has been Chad Skiz. This has been Flannel Fest. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having me.